a station abandoned in 1971, but still collecting data in 2025. Shut down, power dead, systems offline. So who, or what, is still feeding the sensors? The story begins in the dead center of the Great Basin Desert, an expanse so silent that early Cold War scientists once joked it was the only place on Earth where even echoes get lost. Here, at the base of a runt volcanic ridge, the United States quietly built a classified listening post in 1966. It went by a deliberately forgettable name, Array K9, part of a short-lived seismic and atmospheric monitoring network meant to detect Soviet underground tests. The desert was perfect for this purpose. No cities, no rail lines, no ground vibrations except the shifting of sand, noise-free terrain, an engineer's dream. But K9 was also unstable. Funding collapsed in 1971. New detection satellites made the ground stations obsolete, and the entire network was shut down. The shutdown logs were simple: power disconnected, instrument racks removed, all sensors decommissioned. After that, Array K9 was never mentioned again. No upgrades, no restorations, no classified budgets hidden in obscure line items. The place was dead, or so everyone believed. In late 2024, a routine orbital sweep by a commercial imaging satellite picked up something odd. A faint electromagnetic pulse, regular and timed, coming from the coordinates of the abandoned station. Not strong enough to be power leakage. Not random enough to be geological noise. It was patterned, deliberate. At first, analysts thought it was a leftover metal tower, catching lightning discharges. The desert does strange things with static. But when a second satellite detected the same pulse, same frequency, same duration, same directionality, the anomaly was escalated. By January 2025, the Pentagon quietly reopened the case. They dug into the original blueprints of Array K9. Something in the design frustrated the new analysts. The station wasn't just a seismic post. It had been fitted with multi-axis passive sensors, capable of registering pressure shifts, low-frequency resonance, and ground-borne disturbances below the threshold of human perception. Nothing cutting-edge, just extremely sensitive equipment from a paranoid era. Yet even if the sensors had somehow survived 54 years of abandonment, the math didn't add up. The original systems required external generators. Those were removed in 71. Solar panels were never installed. The desert heat would have cooked any wiring within a decade. So how was Array K9 producing regular, structured, time-stamped data? A two-person field team was assembled under a civilian research cover story. Their assignment was simple: go to the coordinates, confirm the anomaly, and retrieve whatever was generating the signal. Nothing in their briefing suggested danger. Nothing hinted at a deeper history. They were told they were investigating a misclassified seismic echo, a bureaucratic leftover from an old monitoring project. But before they even reached the ridge, the first anomaly struck. The ground sensors at a weather station 8 miles away suddenly recorded movement in a straight line across the desert floor. Movement with no mass, movement with no source. It was headed directly toward Array K9. How is an abandoned system gathering data that requires power it should no longer have? The field team reached Array K9 just after sunrise. The desert was unnaturally still. No wind, no insects, not even heat haze lifting off the rocks. It felt held, as if the landscape itself were waiting. The team lead, Mason Hale, noted something immediately. The ridge looked disturbed. Not recently, but not naturally either. Lines in the sand that should have faded decades ago still traced faint arcs around the old foundations. patterns too geometric to be erosion, too intentional to be ignored. The main structure of Array K9 had collapsed in the 1980s, according to old aerial imagery. But the moment hail brushed away the top layer of sand, he froze. Beneath it was an intact metal surface, smooth, uncorroded, as if shielded from 5 decades of desert exposure. A small, circular hatch protruded just enough to betray its presence. No blueprint had ever mentioned a subterranean module. His partner, Dr. Aisha Calder, an expert in seismic data, placed a portable spectrograph on the hatch. The reading made no sense. It emitted a faint, rhythmic vibration every 11 seconds, identical to the anomaly captured from orbit. "This isn't possible," she whispered. "It's not powered." But the hatch pulsed again, slight, precise, mechanical. Before they could investigate, Hale's radio crackled, except no one was transmitting. Instead, the device registered a low-frequency resonance coming from beneath their feet. A resonance too organized to be natural. Calder ran a diagnostic. The pattern repeated, rising by 3 microhertz each cycle. Like something adjusting, like something tuning itself, like something noticing them. Hale checked the sand around the ridge. That's when he saw it. A long, shallow impression trailing across the desert, like a single, continuous footprint. It stretched toward the horizon, perfectly straight, cutting through dunes as if something weightless but directional had passed through. It stopped directly at the buried hatch. Whatever made it ended here. Calder pulled up the old station blueprints again. That's when she realized a deeper issue. Array K9 was never meant to be decommissioned in the first place. The official shutdown date didn't match the engineering logs. Internal memos from 1971 abruptly ended mid-sentence. And a final unsigned message simply read, "The array interprets more than we do." Before she could show this to Hale, her tablet flickered. The seismic probe she had placed 10 meters away began transmitting new data. Data impossible for an offline station to provide. Peaks, troughs, directional pulses. But the timestamps were the real shock. The readings were arriving 3 seconds before the probe recorded them. Not after. Not delayed. Before. Calder's breath caught. "Hale, the station isn't listening to us," she whispered. "It's predicting us." A deep rumble passed beneath their boots. Not an earthquake, not machinery. It felt like the desert answering back. If the station was truly dead, then what exactly is responding to them now? The rumble faded as suddenly as it began, leaving a hollow silence hanging over the ridge. Hale steadied himself, waiting for the aftershock that never came. Calder checked her instruments. Nothing. No tremor, no vibration, no subsurface shift. Whatever moved beneath them hadn't displaced the ground. It had passed through it. Calder knelt beside the buried hatch, wiping sand from a series of faint, circular indentations along its edge. They almost looked like sensor ports, micro apertures no wider than a grain of rice. She placed a fingertip near one, not touching it, just close enough to feel for airflow. A soft warmth radiated outward. "That's internal heat," she said quietly. "But the station has no power source. None." Hale expected the warmth to fade, the way sun-baked metal cools after dawn. It didn't. Instead, the temperature rose, gently, steadily, like something waking up. He stepped back, hand instinctively resting on his belt flashlight as if that might help. The desert felt different now, subtly charged, like static lingering before a storm. But there were no clouds, no wind, no signs of weather at all. Only the slow, deliberate pulse beneath the hatch. Then, without warning, Hale's tablet buzzed. The satellite team had pushed an update. Unscheduled transmission detected. Origin K9. Triangulating. But before Hale could ask what that meant, Calder raised a shaking hand. "Mason," she whispered. "Look." Her portable seismic probe, still positioned 10 meters away, had begun drawing an outline in the data feed. A shape, a curved form, repeating every few seconds. Not random, not geological. A contour traced with intent. A rising arc. A descending loop. A second rising signature. It looked disturbingly like the silhouette of the ridge they were standing on. "But the probe shouldn't know terrain shapes," Hale said. "It doesn't," Calder replied. "The station does. It's feeding the probe." The ground, for a brief moment, let out a low, almost guttural resonance. So deep, it blurred the line between sound and vibration. Hale's instincts screamed to move, but curiosity pinned him in place. Calder adjusted her readings, narrowing the filter. The shape became clearer. It wasn't just the ridge. It was them. 2 smaller signatures, differently sized, differently spaced, mirrored in the seismic output. "This system is mapping us," Calder breathed. "It's identifying positions, movements, posture. Mason, it's tracking us in real time." Hale's pulse quickened. But why? And how is it powering anything? Calder didn't answer. She was scrolling through the old technical notes again, through scraps of handwritten reports, margins where engineers had scribbled observations no one approved for official logs. One line stopped her cold. "The array responds to motion before motion occurs. Recommendation: discontinue field tests." Hale frowned. "Responds before?" "That would explain the earlier readings," Calder murmured. "It's not predicting us because it's conscious. It's predicting us because its sensors operate on a delay inversion." Hale stared at her, uncomprehending. "The station receives effects before causes." As if on cue, the hatch exhaled, a soft, metallic sigh, like old machinery remembering how to breathe. The desert fell silent again. Too silent, as if something beneath them had shifted its attention, and was now listening back. If the station is replying, then who was it waiting for all these years? If the station can detect their movements before they happen, what else has it already calculated? Hale crouched beside the hatch as the metal plate released another faint pulse. This time, the vibration didn't feel mechanical. It felt responsive, like the subtle shift of a living organism testing its surroundings. Calder backed away, eyes fixed on her tablet, as new readings streamed in faster than she could process. "The station just sent a broadband ping through the ground," she said, "across 6 frequencies simultaneously." "That's impossible. It doesn't have transmitters." "It shouldn't have anything, Mason." Before Hale could reply, the sand around the hatch began to ripple, slow at first, then more precisely, forming a circular distortion that expanded outward. Not like wind-shaping dunes, not like an animal moving below, more like a pattern printed from beneath the earth, as if something was outlining the station's perimeter from the inside. Calder watched with growing dread. "It's marking a boundary. This isn't random activation, it's a process." Hale stepped back, scanning the surrounding desert. For miles, everything was still, but the air held a pressure he couldn't name, a thickness, a density, like the atmosphere before an eclipse. He switched on his handheld EM meter. The needle spiked instantly. The station was charging. "Calder, something's feeding it power." Calder's voice tightened. "From where? There's no generator, no solar source, no external supply." Yet the EM field wasn't rising uniformly. It surged in pulses, each perfectly timed with the vibration from the hatch, like a heartbeat syncing with its own echo. Then her laptop chimed. A new file had appeared inside the system cache, created by the probe, yet time-stamped 4 minutes in the future. She opened it slowly. Inside was a string of seismic coordinates, but they didn't match any natural event, any fault line, any subsurface chamber. They were arranged in a curved path, smooth, arcing, deliberate, and they were headed toward Array K9. "This is a trajectory," Calder whispered. "Something is moving." And the station detected it before it arrived. "How big?" Hale asked. Calder hesitated, rechecking the values. "Not big, not heavy, but focused, like a narrow column of force." Hale felt a chill ripple through him despite the desert heat. "A force? You mean—" She cut him off. "Look at the velocity estimate." He did, and his breath caught. The projected speed wasn't measured in miles per hour. It was measured in phase intervals, units used to track oscillations, not objects. "This thing isn't moving through space," Calder said quietly. "It's moving through states. The array isn't sensing an object. It's sensing a transition." The ground beneath them hummed in agreement. The hatch warmed again, this time accompanied by a faint metallic click, like a lock disengaging after decades of waiting. Calder's eyes widened. "Oh no, Mason, it's opening." The seam around the circular hatch flexed, exhaling a thin column of superheated air. Sand shifted back, almost respectfully, as if repelled by something it couldn't cling to. Hale reached out instinctively, then froze. From the darkness below, a new signal rose, steady, rhythmic, unmistakably intentional. It wasn't listening anymore. It was issuing a reply. If the station is replying, then who was it waiting for all these years? The hatch opened only a few inches, but that was enough. A thin breath of scorching air escaped, rising in a wavering column that shimmered against the morning light. Hale instinctively stepped back, but Calder leaned in, her scientific curiosity overwhelming fear. Down in the darkness, something glowed. A pale, pulsing ring of light, rotating in precise intervals, like a clock without hands. "It's a core interface," Calder whispered. "But this design, it's decades ahead of its time." Hale scanned the perimeter. The boundary the station had drawn, those perfect concentric ripples in the sand, was now fading, as if whatever signal had created them no longer needed to announce its presence. The EM meter hummed louder, the pulses aligning with the rotation beneath the hatch. The system felt synchronized, harmonized, almost satisfied. Then Hale's tablet vibrated violently. A final file appeared, time-stamped 10 minutes ahead of the current moment. A seismic event, not an explosion, not a collapse, a release. He opened the file, and the screen displayed the same curved trajectory they'd seen earlier. But now, the end point had shifted. It no longer stopped at Array K9. It was inside the station. Calder stared at the pattern. "It's not tracking something outside anymore. It's tracking something becoming." Before Hale could ask what she meant, a low harmonic tone rose from beneath the hatch. Not random noise, not machinery. It was a structured signal, measured, layered, almost melodic. The kind of sound created by a system communicating with another system. Only there was no second system, unless the station had been waiting for one to awaken. The rotating ring of light brightened, casting faint reflections along the inner walls. Cables they'd assumed were dead flickered with life, sending currents through conduits that should have corroded to dust decades ago. The entire underground chamber felt like it was reassembling itself from memory, like a sleeper stretching after a long, enforced silence. Calder backed away slowly. Mason, this isn't reactivation. This is reintegration. It's filling in missing data. Hale scanned the desert again, but nothing moved. No figure approached. No anomaly shimmered across the horizon. The world outside remained empty and still, but the world beneath was completing a process long interrupted. Suddenly the tone dropped, deepening into a resonant hum that vibrated the sand around their boots. The hatch quivered. The ring of light slowed its rotation until it clicked into a new position, exactly aligned with the coordinates from the future time-stamped file. And then the seismic probe updated one last time. A single line of text appeared. Short, deliberate, impossible. Receiver ready. Calder's voice trembled. Receiver for what? Hale didn't answer. He couldn't, because the core light dimmed for a fraction of a second. And in that moment, another pulse traveled outward through the ground, strong enough to register miles away. But this pulse wasn't searching. It wasn't mapping. It wasn't responding. It was inviting. Whatever the station had been waiting for in 1971, the signal had finally reached 2025. And the desert, silent for half a century, listened back. If this is only the receiver, then where is the transmitter?